The first time that she spread her legs for him had been like opening her jaws for the dentist. Clouds of doubt, dread, resentment, guilt, and sentimentality combined to shadow the faintest ray of pleasure. Eyes squeezed shut, she tried to imagine that it was Bernard inside her. But this new man felt so different, so strange, that the fantasy never solidified. In the weeks that followed, she relaxed somewhat, primarily as a result of his unexpected gentleness. Eyes still tightly closed, she'd move against him as if he were a device from a sex shop, mechanically churning herself to the creamy brink of aloof orgasm. When she finally went over the brink, one twilight, when incense burners were smoking up the flat and camel bells tinkled in the square below, she relaxed far more. The next time he undressed at her bedside, she kept her eyes wide open and saw what she'd been missing. Although Aben had resumed an active nightlife, giving the discos one last whirl before marriage, he claimed daily workouts in the family gymnasium were keeping him trim. His Semitic beak had a strong masculine contour. The teeth that armed his shy smile were brilliant and regular, especially in comparison to Bernard's yellow Rex. And there was a generous light in his chocolate eyes. His phallus was long and slender and slippery, and as curved as a Phoenician eyebrow. Aroused, it stood politely on end, but bowed backwards so that its head, so smooth and purple as an eggplant, almost touched his belly. Even before Aben could climb into bed, she was stroking that exotic fixture, marveling at its natural lubricity, rubbing it against her nipples, holding it against her flushed cheeks. The poor man barely got his feet off the floor before she had him in her mouth. As he throbbed in her throat, pumping jet after jet of that steamy, translucent mucilage with which Cupid tries to glue the world together, she felt as if she were gulping concentrated ecstasy, and it made her blood croon. Later that evening, he focused on her clitoris with unusual sensitivity, and as he was leaving to return to the palace, she hinted that one meeting a week might be shortchanging Aphrodite. "After all, you're a sheik, and I'm a redhead," she whispered. From then on, he visited her on both Wednesdays and Saturdays, and they fucked the night away. More than once, Lee Cherie tried to convince herself that she'd fallen for him, but she knew that she was only in love from the waist down. No matter how ardently the peach clam might gush over him, her heart was unmoved. On those occasions when the peach fish was most ebullient, her heart would grow moody, turn up the collar on its trench coat, pull down the brim of its hat, dangle a cigarette from its sullen lips, and go walk for hours on the poorly lighted streets of the waterfront. If a heart won't listen to a vagina, what will it listen to? The question went unanswered. But Wednesday and Saturday evenings passed in physical rapture, and until there arose a difficulty procuring Tura limestone for its facing, the pyramid proceeded ahead of schedule. Chapter 81. Morality depends on culture. Culture depends on climate. Climate depends on geography. Seattle, where the clams were singing. Seattle, where the trolls were hiding. Seattle, where the blackberries were glistening. Seattle, where the bloomers of the sky were drooping. Seattle, the city that washed its hands with the incessancy of a proctologist. Seattle was far behind her, at memory's rest, on a dank, deep, mossy bed. Now the princess lived at the edge of a vast desert, under the seal of the sun. The change in the interior geography was just the opposite. Indoors, she had traded the barren attic for a lavish flat. Her outside world and her inside world had swapped places. Had there been a corresponding psychological shift? And had its effects edited her moral code? Perhaps, slightly. But something had happened in the intimate immensity of the attic that, if not negating that alteration, had rendered it trivial. She had become sensitized to objecthood. Thanks to the camel pack, Lee Cherie could no longer snub an object. Thanks to the camel pack, she had been cured of animate chauvinism. Among her acquaintances at the university, among the enlightened delegates to the Carefest, those who railed most liberally against racism, sexism, and ageism discriminated hourly against the inanimate objects around them, denying them love, respect, and even attention. But though she'd reached no conscious conclusions on the matter, Lee Cherie had come to consider the smallest, deadest thing as if it had some life of its own. During the day, out at the pyramid site, she'd find herself regarding the tools of the workmen with at least as much admiration as she regarded the workers themselves. Her grip lingered on doorknobs much longer than necessary. She patted the big granite blocks with the casual affection others might spend on a passing pooch, treating the stones as though they had individual personalities, while the wooden canteen from which she quenched her thirst became a special friend. She treasured its mouth against her mouth, was prepared to defend it against adversaries. In the evening, after she'd soaked off the desert dust and applied a fresh coat of zinc oxide to the blaze of her nose, redheads burn easily, she'd stroll through the flat, provided it wasn't Wednesday or Saturday, of course, randomly picking up ashtrays, music boxes, coffee cups, letter openers, artifacts, or candies, boring into them until each expanded into a limitless world, every bit as rich and interesting as that other, more physically mobile world about which she remained curious, but from which she was once again isolated. In a society that is essentially designed to organize, direct, and gratify mass impulses, what is there to minister the silent zones of a man as an individual? Religion? Art? Nature? No. The church has turned religion into standardized public spectacle, and the museum has done the same for art. The Grand Canyon and Niagara Falls have been looked at so much that they've become effete, sucked empty by too many stupid eyes. What is there to minister to the silent zones of a man as an individual? How about a cold chicken bone on a paper plate at midnight? How about a lurid lipstick lengthening or shortening at your command? How about a styrofoam nest abandoned by a bird you've never known? How about a pair of windshield wipers pursuing one another futilely while you drive home alone through a downpour? How about something beneath the seat touched by your shoe at the movies? How about worn pencils, cute forks, fat little radios, boxes of bow ties, and bubbles on the side of a bathtub? Yes, these are the things, these kite strings and olive oil cans and valentine hearts stuffed with nougat, that form the bond between the autistic vision and the experiential world. It is to show these things in their true mysterious light that is the purpose of the moon. One Wednesday evening, lying beside Aben Fizzle, At rest after a 4-quarter double overtime copulation, Lee Cherie startled both herself and her intended by sitting up suddenly in bed, grasping the Vaseline jar that she'd been watching in the moonlight, and asking aloud, "Whatever happened to the golden ball?"